I'm Emma Williams, 34 years old, and I always thought I knew everything there was to know about my family, or at least everything my parents wanted me to know. Dad was quiet, thoughtful, the kind of man who kept his emotions locked away behind gentle smiles and long silences. He loved old books, classical music, and tinkering in the garage late at night. Growing up, I used to watch him through the hallway door, listening to the soft scratch of his pen as he wrote in his worn leather journal. I'd asked once what he was writing, and he only smiled and said, "Just thoughts, sweetheart." When he passed away last winter, the grief felt like a slow burning fire that wouldn't go out. I spent weeks sorting through his things, folding shirts that still smelled faintly of aftershave, dusting off the books he'd read so many times, and carefully packing them away. Among the boxes, buried at the bottom of an old cedar chest, I found something unexpected: Dad's journal. The leather cover cracked with age, the pages yellowed, edges curled like autumn leaves. At first, I hesitated. It felt wrong, almost like invading a secret garden he had tended all his life. But curiosity and a strange sense of unfinished business drew me in. The first entries were what you'd expect: reflections on work, short notes about family vacations, even a few clumsy sketches of our old dog, Max. But as I kept reading, the tone changed. About halfway through, I found a name I'd never heard before: Michael. My heart caught. The entry read, "Michael turned 8 today. I wonder if he still remembers me. Sometimes I dream of him, and in those dreams he calls me Dad." Dad had only one child, me, or so I thought. I sat there for a long time, the journal trembling in my hands, replaying every childhood memory, every dinner conversation, every photo album. How could there be someone else, a brother, and I never knew? And why had Dad kept him a secret? The next few entries gave me fragments, pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. Mentions of a woman named Laura, who Dad wrote about with so much tenderness it made my chest ache. A line that read, "Leaving them was the hardest thing I've ever done." And another, "I wish Emma could know her brother, but some truths hurt more than silence." My head spun. I'd always seen Dad as a steady, reliable man, someone whose entire life revolved around family and routine. Now, I realized there had been another life before me, a secret chapter written in ink he never intended me to read. In the days that followed, I couldn't get Michael out of my mind. What if he was still out there? Did he know about me? Was he happy? I found myself imagining what he might look like now, older than me by, 8, 10 years? Would we have the same eyes, the same stubborn chin everyone said I got from Dad? One night, unable to sleep, I pulled the journal back out and started reading again. That's when I noticed something I missed before: an address scribbled hastily in the margin of a page, faded but still legible: Laura and Michael, 42 Chestnut Lane, Wilmington. Wilmington was only a few hours from where I lived. My heart raced as possibilities unfolded in my mind. Was Michael still living there? Would I knock on a stranger's door and meet my brother? Or would I find nothing but empty memories and regret? I knew I had to try, even if it meant opening wounds my father had tried to keep closed. The next morning, I packed a small overnight bag, grabbed the journal, and set off. The drive was a blur of nerves and half-formed hopes. I replayed Dad's words over and over: "Some truths hurt more than silence." Was this one of those truths? Would Michael even want to meet me? What if he didn't know I existed? When I finally pulled onto Chestnut Lane, my hands were slick with sweat against the steering wheel. The houses were modest, old but lovingly kept. Number 42 was a small white cottage with blue shutters, a garden blooming wildly in the front yard. My heart thudded painfully as I parked across the street. I sat there, engine off, for what felt like forever. Finally, gathering every ounce of courage, I stepped out of the car, crossed the road, and walked up the narrow stone path to the front door. Before I could knock, the door opened. A woman stood there, older than I expected, late 60s maybe, with kind eyes that instantly reminded me of Dad. She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice soft but cautious. I swallowed hard, my voice shaking as I spoke. "Hi, I'm sorry to bother you. My name is Emma Williams. I think you might have known my father, Daniel Williams." Her eyes widened slightly, and for a heartbeat, the mask slipped. Pain, surprise, and something like recognition flickered across her face. "Yes," she said, almost in a whisper. "I knew Daniel." I took a breath, the words tumbling out. "I found his journal, and I read about Michael. I think he might be my brother." The woman's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. "Oh, dear God," she murmured. "You're Emma." In that moment, I knew. I had found them. The past my father had hidden from me wasn't a story. It was real, living and breathing. And I had just opened a door to a family I never. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt thick with years of unspoken words and memories I never had. Then she stepped aside and said softly, "Please, come in." The house smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Photos lined the hallway walls, black and white portraits I didn't recognize, a few newer color prints of children and birthdays. But none of them showed Michael. Or at least, no one I could immediately recognize as him. We sat down in the living room, the afternoon sun streaming through lace curtains, catching dust motes that seemed to dance in slow motion. Laura looked at me, her gaze filled with something almost maternal, yet weighed down by grief. "You look so much like him," she finally said. Her voice trembled. "Like Daniel." "I didn't know," I whispered. "All these years, he never told me." Tears welled in her eyes, and she nodded slowly. "He thought it was best. After we parted ways, he wanted to protect you. And Michael, too." My heart clenched. "Where is Michael now? Does he still live here?" Laura hesitated, eyes dropping to her hands folded tightly in her lap. "No," she said quietly. "He moved away about 10 years ago. Lives in Boston now. Works as an architect." A mixture of relief and disappointment washed over me. Relief that he was alive and building a life. Disappointment that he wasn't here, that I couldn't just see him in this moment. "Does he know about me?" I asked, barely above a whisper. Laura closed her eyes. "No. Your father asked me not to tell him. Michael always believed his father left because of other reasons. Daniel thought it was kinder that way." The weight of it all crashed into me. My father had carried this secret his entire life, trying to shield us both from truths he thought would break us. But instead, it had left us both incomplete. Laura stood, walked over to a small wooden chest by the window, and opened it. She pulled out a stack of letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon, and handed them to me. "Your father wrote to Michael," she said. "He never mailed them. After Daniel passed, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't throw them away. Maybe you should have them." My hands shook as I untied the ribbon. The letters smelled faintly of tobacco and old paper. Dad's handwriting was instantly recognizable, careful, slanted, and familiar in a way that made my chest tighten. The first letter started, "Dear Michael, not a day passes that I don't think of you. I wonder if you still remember the way I'd carry you on my shoulders, or the stories I used to tell before bed."
He loved you both.
Laura said softly. You were never a secret in his heart, Emma. Only in words. I stayed with Laura until dusk, talking about my father, trying to piece together a man I thought I'd known so well. She told me about how they'd met, young, foolishly in love but from different worlds. How her family disapproved and eventually the pressure tore them apart. How Dad had tried to stay but responsibility and fear pulled him away. He never stopped loving you, she said again, as if repeating it could somehow lessen the ache. I believed her, but it didn't erase the sadness. When I left, Laura pressed a slip of paper into my hand. Michael's phone number, she said. He deserves to know. The drive home felt endless. My thoughts tangled between anger, sorrow, and an unexpected hope. Would he hate me for showing up? Would he even believe me? But deeper than fear, there was something else, a quiet excitement. For the first time, the brother I'd never known felt real. Not a name in a journal, not a ghost in my father's memory. Someone I could reach out to. That night in my small apartment, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. My thumb hovered over the screen, heart pounding so loud I could barely think. I typed a message. Hi, Michael. My name is Emma Williams. I know this may sound strange, but I believe I'm your sister. I found Dad's journal after he passed away, and I'd really like to talk if you're willing. I hesitated, reading it over and over, then finally pressed send. Seconds felt like hours. Minutes dragged by. Finally, the screen lit up. Typing. My breath caught as I saw the word typing blink on the screen, then disappear, then reappear. Finally, his reply came through. Hi, Emma. Wow, this is unexpected. Can we talk? Just 3 short sentences, but they felt like a door swinging open. My hands shook as I typed back, Yes, whenever you're ready. Almost instantly, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. My chest tightened as I answered, voice trembling. Hello? A quiet pause, then a man's voice. Careful, slightly husky, tinged with disbelief. Emma? Yes, I breathed. Hi, Michael. The first few moments were awkward. Neither of us knew what to say, where to begin. I could hear the hesitance in his voice, mirroring the nerves in my own. Finally, I blurted out, I'm sorry for dropping this on you out of nowhere. I found Dad's journal after he died, and your name was everywhere. He fell silent for a moment. Dad, he echoed like he was testing how the word felt on his tongue in this new context. So, you're really my sister? I am, I whispered. Half-sister, technically, but yes. Another pause. I could hear him exhale, as if trying to steady himself. Emma, I had no idea, he said softly. I mean, I always felt like something was missing, but no one ever told me anything. Mom never talked about him, except to say it didn't work out. I didn't know about you either, I admitted. He kept it from me. I think maybe he thought he was protecting us both. We talked for almost 2 hours. Michael told me about growing up in Boston, about Laura, the mother I'd just met, who, despite carrying her own grief, had raised him to be kind and grounded. He shared stories of his childhood, how he always wondered why his father never called on birthdays, why there were no photos of them together, why his mom sometimes looked sad when she thought no one was watching. I thought maybe it was me, he confessed quietly, like I'd done something wrong when I was a kid to make him leave. My heart broke at his words. It wasn't your fault, I whispered. He wrote so much about you, Michael. You were always in his thoughts. I think he just didn't know how to go back. When I told him about Dad's letters, the ones Laura had kept all these years, his voice caught. He wrote to me? Yes, so many. I haven't read them all yet, but they're yours, Michael. He meant them for you. The line was silent for a moment, except for the faint sound of him breathing, like he was trying to keep from crying. Thank you, Emma, he finally managed. Thank you for finding me, for telling me. I'm just glad you didn't hang up, I joked softly, my own voice cracking. Are you kidding? He replied, and I could almost hear him smile. We agreed to meet. Nothing dramatic or cinematic, just coffee in Boston the following weekend. After we hung up, I sat there at my kitchen table, phone still in hand, overwhelmed by a swirl of relief, fear, hope, and grief. Dad was gone, and I could never hear his side of the story. Never ask him why he kept us apart. But maybe, just maybe, something good could come from what he left behind. A new connection. A family that wasn't built the way we expected, but still ours. That Saturday, I took the train to Boston. The ride felt endless, my mind racing with what ifs. What if he changed his mind? What if meeting in person felt awkward or disappointing? What if, deep down, he blamed me? When I arrived at the small cafe we'd chosen, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might faint. Then I saw him through the window. Tall, dark-haired like our father, wearing a navy sweater and jeans, nervously checking his phone. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and walked inside. He looked up, and for a second, it was like looking into a mirror of familiar features arranged differently. The same brow, similar eyes, even if his were brown and mine were blue. Emma, he said, standing up so quickly he almost knocked over his chair. Michael, I whispered. We hugged. It wasn't perfect, it was a little stiff, a little unsure, but it felt real, warm, alive. We talked for hours, sipping coffee that went cold long before we finished. He asked about Dad, what he was like, his quirks, the silly habits I'd grown up with. I shared stories. How Dad insisted on eating cereal at midnight, how he used to hum old rock songs when he cooked, how he taught me to ride a bike and never quite stopped calling me kiddo, even when I was 30. Michael listened, sometimes smiling, sometimes looking quietly sad. And he told me about his childhood too, about his love for drawing buildings, how he'd always imagined designing houses people could truly call home. At some point, we fell into a comfortable silence, just sitting there together. I wish he'd just told me, Michael finally said. It would have hurt, but not knowing hurt too. I know, I whispered. Me too. But as the day turned into evening, something unexpected happened. The grief didn't go away, but it made room for something else. Hope. We couldn't change the past, but maybe, together, we could build something new. A family that started late, but it's been almost 8 months since that first coffee in Boston. In some ways, Michael and I are still strangers, feeling our way through memories that don't match and childhoods that ran parallel instead of intersecting. But in other ways, we've become what we've both longed for: family. We text most days, sometimes about big things, a rough meeting at work, a first date gone awkward, and sometimes about nothing at all: photos of the dog sleeping funny, a funny sign spotted on the street, or a song that feels like Dad might have liked it. We've met several times since. He's come to stay at my apartment in New York, marveling at the noise and the lights. I've stayed in Boston, helping him paint his small living room a shade of sea glass blue that matches almost nothing but makes him happy. We've fought, too, over small things that reveal big wounds. About Dad, about the choices he made, about what we each missed out on. But we always find our way back to each other. One chilly October morning, we did something we'd been talking about for months, but hadn't quite been brave enough to do. We visited Dad's grave together. Standing there, side by side, the ground damp with autumn rain, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It was acceptance. That he was who he was. That he'd made choices we could never fully understand. And that we didn't have to let those choices define the rest of our lives. Michael knelt and placed a small drawing on the stone. A sketch of a house he'd designed. "I wish you could see this," he whispered. I set down a photo of the two of us from our first coffee. "I wish you could see us," I murmured. Later, walking back through the quiet cemetery paths, Michael turned to me. "You know," he said, "for someone I didn't know existed a year ago, you're the most real family I've got." I smiled, my throat tight. "You too." We don't have a perfect family story. We don't have shared childhood vacations, inside jokes from growing up, or matching memories of birthdays and holidays. But we do have, now, phone calls in the middle of the night, new traditions, like sending each other the worst Christmas ornaments we can find, or comparing notes on which frozen pizza is truly the best. And we have something Dad, for all his flaws, somehow managed to leave behind: each other. If you're still watching, thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt like family was something you'd lost, or something you never really had, I hope this reminds you. It's never too late to build it, even if it starts with a single letter in an old box, and even if it looks nothing like you imagined.